like yours.
Yeah.
And just feel free to add anything.
好，各位同學仔，歡迎大家嚟到咧，我哋今日咧有一個嘅好好嘅一個嘅 guest lecture 啦。OK，welcome everyone to our guest lecture today because we have a very important guest. From where? From Amsterdam. Actually, here is we have Arthur today with us. I suppose some of you may have met Arthur online before, probably in some classes or some workshop before. And may I introduce a bit about Arthur's background? And he is a very experienced designer in the area of information design, and also some of the cultural and political power, and also the visual language. And he is a very experienced and have a lot of good work to show us. And today we special focus on the topic of circular design. I suppose some of you have seen those posters around on campus, and some of you may also participate in the tour or some lectures in this week. And because the circular design, actually it is maybe a little bit new term to our students, but today we are very happy to have Arthur to introduce this term with us and also share a lot of information and knowledge about this topic. So may I let you guys to have a big applause to welcome Arthur today with us.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. And I think it's great that the program that you're following and working on circular design, very important. So today I will show you a lecture about a little bit about the history of taking care of Earth. First, just it's like a 1 or 2 minute video. I want to start as an introduction to get you in the mood for critical thinking.
Here's the output of sound to use.
Sound. This one.
Yeah.
Ah, okay, great. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay. Okay, this one was without sound. The sound didn't work, but I can share it later, the file, so that you can have the sound. It was a bit gloomy, dangerous, scary sound on the background, but it's very about the images. Basically, this was the project I did. This was a project I did in 2021 at St. John's Academy, and it's really about looking at critical culture. So, for example, now with the circular design and circular future, it's very important to have a critical mindset to really study the world around you, and also as artists and designers, you're making visual messages to communicate problems and as well as solutions. So for today, and in that little clip you saw, for example, documentaries, musicians, poems, novels. So the idea of the video is that all kinds of ways of critical thinking can be turned into many types of messages. You can make movies, poems, installations. So you, as the students, visual culture, communication, I think that's very great. You have so much options in your toolbox to make important messages. And I think that's also the course of Vincent, a little bit about positive messages. Yeah, so now I will start the lecture, the slideshow that I edited for today. Yeah, so I call it, this title you already have, Information, Graphics, and the Power of Images in Times of Your Changing Climate. So that was what I was working on, and during editing this slideshow that you will see, I was really thinking about like what, if this is a subtitle, what is then the title of the slideshow that I put together, and I would call it Understanding Earth Systems. So we are focusing on today and even also on the future. But of course, there's a long trajectory of looking at the world. Today's problems or problematics or challenges, they are rooted in the past. So I took the opportunity to take you on quite a dense journey. It's not like deep science, it's more like me wanting to share with you like a sort of visual thinking. It's not like very scientific, but it's really from a designer's point of view. So I hope you will enjoy it. And I will just give short comments on every slide. There are quite some slides. I counted, there are 80, but I keep it very, I don't go into detail. We can of course go into detail in the classes tomorrow and after tomorrow. So just sit back, enjoy the ride. We are going into this timeline, and we end up today at the end of the presentation. So keep in mind, it's really about understanding Earth systems. This is a slide that I discovered recently. It's from Hildegard von Bingen. She's a writer, composer, philosopher, mystic, visionary, and as a medical writer and practitioner. And she's kind of the founder of natural history in Germany. Feel free, you don't have to write all of this down, but what is important is that even like in 1165, like it's like 1,900 years ago, people were looking at their surrounding and thinking, how does this world work? How are the Earth, the planets, what are we seeing in the skies? So it's just like, it's basically a sort of infographic from somebody 900 years ago, trying to make sense of here's the world with water, fire, there's the moon, there's the stars, there's the sun. So already thinking about, okay, where are we and how does this work? This was a map I found, it's called the Calmido map by Jihu and Kwon Kun. So I also, in this slideshow, I tried to mix a little bit Dutch work, Chinese work, also a lot of American work simply because the technological side of it. So the sources of the images are from all times and all places. Very intercultural journey. So what I like about the map is like from 1470, so you see it's not super accurate yet. So just this idea of collective studying the world, making maps, making diagrams, but also paintings, and not only about like representation of the space, but this is a painting by Hieronymus Bos, a Dutch painter, and it's really about human behavior. And it was a bit rooted in a religious context, but basically, even from religion or from science, we are trying to make sense of the world. So here he painted all kinds of human interaction. And at the time, also there was considered wrong or bad, but basically he painted this painting just to analyze and represent and communicate human behavior. And of course, what we do is of importance and has an effect on the world. Our choices or behavior. This is a craftsman who's making textile clothing. And here we still use foot power. So he's operating the machine with his foot, because later we will see that this slideshow and this topic is also about energy. How do we make the machines run? How do we operate them? What are the machines doing? So it's really about energy also. This is a map I found by an Italian map maker, Matteo Ricci, and I found it really beautiful map. There are high definition images available on the internet at the Library of Congress. Here you see China in the middle, and Matteo Ricci was an Italian map maker, and he was very well connected to Chinese dynasty and traders. So he was really putting a lot of effort in mapping all the existing knowledge that he has right then to make this into a big map. So these are printed on 6 panels. There are about like this high, and then 6 next to each other. Very, very nice. But what I like about the map is also like it's China in the middle, because in Europe we are very used to maps that are always Euro-centered. So also it's a matter of perspective. How you look at the world is really about about perspective. What is your frame? What is your target? How do you look at the world? This is a drawing by Galileo Galilei. This was because in 1608 they invented the telescopes. Which means that you could really, by curving glass and then doubling the glasses, you could suddenly see very far away and also very zoomed in. So it gave a new perspective again to what we know and what we can see. So it's really about how can we study the world, what can we see, and what is our perspective, cultural, but also technological. So inventions are very important. So these telescopes were invented by people who make glasses to look through, but just by experimentation, they could suddenly see very far away. And then Galileo Galilei was the one who basically used the telescope to look at the moon and suddenly saw detail. So the idea of gathering detail in what we are seeing is very important, and also the tools that we develop for it and that we use. Now we are in 1637. This is a drawing I found of Chinese coal miners in an illustration of the Jianggung Kai Wu encyclopedia. I didn't have the time and to check out the encyclopedia, but I will definitely do. But I saw this image, and just the idea that at one point we were starting to burn coal is very important, because when you burn coal, then the carbon dioxide, the smoke, the material that's left over in the air is released in the air. So the idea of coal is very important in recent history. Here's another map. Skip over that, but also like studying the natural world, all the discoveries, just drawing what we see, the animals, the plants, science, what are the colors, also printing, like the craft of making very good drawings for science is very important. So science needs art, and art needs science, and basically the arts and the sciences, they are together producing new knowledge, new tools, new outcomes, new artworks for scientific purposes, for aesthetic purposes. So the idea of making images, making visual information. This is an interesting painting. I'm not an art historian, but what I remember about this painting is that this was a painting from 1810, and that it was really about the position of the human figure, or us as humans. We are looking at the big horizon of the ocean, of the sea. You know, it's a kind of melancholic image, but it's really about contemplation. Where am I looking at? What is at the end of the horizon? So it's a very, I think, a very impressive painting. And what was also interesting, but I'm not 100% sure, but I read that Caspar David Friedrich was also removing the human figure and then later putting it back again. So he was also, even in his image making, thinking about, okay, do I show the human, or do I show nature, or do I show the relationship? So a lot of artists and scientists, they are thinking about what is the human position with or against or in or outside of nature. We know now, of course, we are nature. There is no nature versus human. We are in nature. This is a very interesting infographic, cartographic map. It's from 1823, and I think it was based on the discovery travels of Alexander von Humboldt, a German traveler, basically. Made a lot of notes and described everything he was encountering on his travels. That science of traveling the world also became data for painters and drawers and scientific for a scientific team. So, for example, here you see all the rivers of the world known at that day, but then compared from the longest to the smallest. So it's a very simple idea, but it just gives comparative quality to looking at rivers and at nature. And here on this side, it was also about the height of the mountains and the different levels of vegetation. Plants, trees, on what level are they growing? So it's, and also as a map, it's, I think, a very smart object, because this is about, you know, it has this diagonal direction, because this is about the mountains, and then he uses, the map maker used this space for the longest rivers to the short. So it's a very creative scientific representation or infographic, if you like. Very briefly, because I think I already have to kind of speed up. We just started, but there were so many slides, so we are going fast through time of discovery. But again, also our tools. You make use of a lot of tools, digital tools today probably, but also still analog tools. I just saw these wonderful objects here. So again, as visual makers, we have so much tools. We can make any type of image and visual for important messages. But imagine, this is the first picture ever taken. I mean, now today with our media, we make thousands of images a week or a day, or or more, and altogether even billions. So just the idea that the tools that we create will also create new content. But this is the first image ever taken. It's in Paris. And then quickly, this is also the first, some years later, this is the first image ever taken with a human figure. You know, like it's just like this idea of, okay, what are we depicting? What are we looking at? How do we use photography? This is 1840, one of, maybe you have heard of Charles Darwin. He was a scientist studying species, animals. Also, with his descriptions, you need good visualizers to visualize the knowledge that was collected also by Darwin. It was just as Alexander was traveling a lot, gathering data, looking around in the world. Coming back to coal and steam as energy powers. This is they call it Cottonopolis. It's Manchester. It's a city in England, and you see the factories burning the coal and making fire to make steam. So just what I like about the image is that there's a lot of nature, but there are also already then 1840 dirty factories. This is the first image of taken from the air in a balloon. This is actually, I would suggest look up also the work of Charles Darwin that I just mentioned. He wrote the book Origin of Species. It's a very important book in biology. And this is actually, there is only one infographic in that book, and that's this one. And it's about the similarity between different species of animals. So maybe you recognize it's also about, they call it the family tree or tree diagram. So if you're interested in the history of information or infographics, also dive into tree diagrams. But talking about trees, actually, this is more a metaphor, the tree. But this actually is a real tree, and it was cut down in 1891. And the tree was then 1,300 years old. And then in the tree, there's also information about sustainability or about the climate of all these years. Because as you know, a tree grows from the inside out, and then you have the yearlings, and there's a lot of information that can be read out of the tree. And then in this case, they made an infographic out of it by making the timeline. So you see this tree is 1,300 years old, all the way to tree cut down 1891. So I think it's very creative, a very simple, elegant solution. And it was shown in the American Museum of Natural History. And again, back to what we can see, we can use telescopes and microscopes to look very far or very close. So at one point, we also invented Röntgen, like X-rays. So imagine that there's a technique that can just see it through your hand, which also gives new aesthetic, but also functional output. So bit by bit, we're now in 1896. We are making new tools to look at the world and our bodies and our planets, the climate. This one I find fascinating because, you know, in today's connected world, there are a lot of cables. We call it the cloud, like the internet, but of course that's hardware. There's a lot of machines and disks and cables and networks. But this was one of the first telegraph lines. So imagine just one line, literally a cable going through the oceans all the way to the other side of the world to send messages, to send signals. And then there's also the oceans themselves. So we can put cables into the oceans, but there's also a species living in the oceans. This one is a book called Art Forms in Nature. It was published in 1904. Actually, there were like 100 of these beautiful drawings, and they were published in bits and pieces in the years before. But in 1904, all the 100 big images were being published together. It's by a biologist called Ernst Haeckel. And then here you see also the combination between art and science. You know, you need good image makers, visual artists to basically create the science behind it. And it also relates, so I hope you also see that in this slideshow, there are a lot of relationships between the things, because if you make cables through the ocean, of course, there's impact on the climate, on the species living in where you drop the infrastructure. Maybe you recognize this infographic. It's the first version of the periodic table that is horizontal. Maybe you know this periodic table with all the minerals that are in our physical natural world. And this was the first version. I will also tomorrow and the day after will give a workshop. Maybe I see you there, but then we also go more in detail into graphics. But what I really enjoy editing and compiling these presentations is that I also learn new things. I know the more common, well-known version of this periodic table. But by researching and preparing this presentation, I learned again new things together with you. And also artists. I mean, there's no scientific functionality here, but just the idea that artists also are looking at the world, at the flora and fauna around us, looking at how light works, how reflection works, how color works, but also how does the paint work, and the tool, the brush. So we are all image makers. Again, scientific, artistic. This is an interesting little snippet from a newspaper from 1912, and it already says the furnaces of the world are now burning at 2 billion tons of coal a year. When this is burned, uniting with oxygen, it adds about 7 billion tons of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere yearly. This tends to make the air a more effective blanket for the Earth and to raise its temperature. The effect may be considerable in a few centuries. So already here, 1912, there was it was known, of course, that there are implications when you burn coal. And indeed, now we are 100 years later, and we have a problem. This is an artist again. Sometimes I doubt it, shall I put it in or not in the slideshow, but I put it in because this artist, Mondriaan, a Dutch artist, he began also with painting trees because he's interested in the object of trees and nature and just studying it and representing it. But he's also interested in abstraction. So if you leave away detail, is there a way to see the essence of the object, and in this case, a tree? 1934, a field guide to birds. So I like it also as an object, as a book, as a function, you know, to have a book where you can see and look up all the species of birds. This is again about the cables. So now there are way more cables than in 1902, you know, so imagine the oceans are being filled with all the cables, not only all the ships in between the places, like shipping goods and mail and food and trading, which of course was already well on the way at the time, but also below the surface, there's a lot of infrastructure being installed. Which again also leads to more communication, which also leads to more speed. So there's more speed, more trade. So slowly, which is also why I used the chronological setup for the slideshow. So bit by bit, the speed of all the processes, all the Earth systems are being accelerated. How long do animals live? This is an infographic published in Compton's Encyclopedia from 1939. Very elegant, nice design. So it's about it's a timeline curved into the poster, and then you see like very short living organisms to very long living organisms. But also, so infographics is also about comparison. Just where we saw a slide where somebody compared the length of rivers, now you see the length of lifetime of different animals. So there, like Darwin was studying species, but also, again, we need graphics, we need visual structures that can deliver the information, that can make the science accessible. We saw a couple of world maps now, and this one was quite revolutionary. It's 1944. This is a map by Buckminster Fuller. He made a map where he folded out the map and in such a way that the world basically becomes one connected island with islands around it. But now you can really clearly see that there's basically one very dense or at least connected structure of land surface. So just by reframing, by changing the perspective, you also change the relationships between all the things on these surfaces and around these surfaces. So always trying out new things, I think for any artist and scientist and designer is crucial, because you have to put effort in experiment and discover new things. This is the first photo taken from space on a suborbital rocket. So imagine a rocket going up and down and shoots a picture with a camera. This is 1957. This is like a book by a Dutch guy, Kees Boeker. It's called Cosmic View. And the idea was to make a book, or actually in the book there are images of very far in the universe, and then zooming into Earth, and then zooming into a place on Earth, and then into the hand of a person, and then going into the hand. So into the microscopic zone, all the way to the level of atoms and things that were known at the time. This is 1957. And we will see it coming back later. Then, also in 1957, the Russians launched a satellite around it that could go around the globe, which also had implications, because then if you put a camera on the satellite, you can basically make photos from all around the world. So it had a lot of implications, political, military, but apart from that, just the fact that we as species are able to make these objects and basically via that way collect imagery. Shortly after, there are also weather satellites. So soon the skies were having more and more satellites in the air, also functional for functions such as weather study. But then 1960, also the invention of plastic. So imagine all the plastic that was coming from petroleum, and then all the objects that since the 60s are being made from plastic. This is a book by Rachel Carson, Silent Spring, also about the environment. And actually, last year there was a documentary called Loud Spring, as a wordplay on this book. Talking about microscopes and about natural phenomena. This is snow. So snow particles being looked at through microscopic technology. So even again, like just looking at the world and the variations and species, the phenomena, and using tools for that, developing tools and we see a whole new world. It can also be inspiring for us as designers. In Dutch we say vormgevers. We give form to things, and nature already has fantastic forms. This is a painting by Gerhard Richter, a well-known German painter, but I really liked the simpleness of it. Like there's the animal, and there's the word. Even word and speech and language is a way of communication, but also the image. So for me, this image is both about nature and animals, but also about communication systems, visual, textual. This is 1965 in Amsterdam. There was this group called the Provost, and they wanted to, they proposed like a shared economy already then. So imagine that the city was filled with white bicycles, and then everybody can pick one wherever they are and wherever they want to go. So the idea of not having too much and sharing ownership over stuff was already born then and way before actually. But again, I mix for this presentation a lot of Dutch, European, Chinese, American stuff together. And at one point there was an artist, designer, journalist who was saying, why haven't we seen a photograph of the whole Earth yet? Because they knew that the NASA and other space agencies had made pictures of the Earth, but the pictures were not released yet to the public. So they made a campaign with buttons and posters and advertisements, basically saying to the government, show us the image of the world that we live on ourselves. And then I talked, 1 minute ago, I talked about the hand. This was the idea by this Dutch Kees Boeker, the book that's zooming out into the universe and into our bodies, was actually later in '68 explored by Charles and Ray Eames. They are American designers, and they wanted to make the book that Kees Boeker made, want to translate it into a film. So that's also something to keep in mind as visual artists and designers and communicators. Sometimes you can use existing ideas and make a new version of it or in a new format. And then, of course, the Apollo 8 astronauts were the first humans to orbit the moon, and they captured this beautiful image of the Earth rising as seen from the moon. And this image was very impactful. It was the first image that gave us an idea, like, okay, we are on a spaceship. We are on one planet. There's no second planet. There's no space or other space to go, and we are all together in this on this object. So that also led to the first Earth Day. It led also to the whole Earth catalog. It was from the guy who did the campaign. Basically, this was a catalog where people could share their tips and tricks for sustainable living. So the idea of being aware of the Earth and planetary boundaries really became more popular, also because of the mass media. I didn't discuss this in the edit of the slideshow. Of course, there's more and more media. There's more and more worry also about the planet. So then also like the design of the recycle logo was done. So also here like a simple logo or pictogram, those things we need to communicate important targets basically. This was a very influential book, The Limits to Growth, which also says limits. So like we cannot grow further and further. The Earth system is limited, so we have to be careful with it. The book is full with very interesting diagrams, which we can discuss in the workshops tomorrow and the day after. In the 80s, one of the climate fears was that there was an ozone hole. So there's this layer around the Earth, but then at the poles there was basically a hole in it. This is a book designed by Pierre Bernard, a French graphic designer. It's also about species and about the Earth. So you see that this image of the Earth is very powerful. But also by traveling into space, we also we make pictures of the Earth, but we also go into space, studying the environment of the Earth. This is an African dust cloud coming from Africa and going over the Caribbean, which is possible to see thanks to satellites. On the other hand, the skies are now pretty full with satellites, so there's always a problem next to the benefit of it. And this is a very important infographic, and also part of the workshop that I do tomorrow and the day after, because this really shows that all the Earth systems, because of the rising population, we need more food, more energy, there's more traffic, there's more water use. So these, from the 1950s, you see that these processes are going very fast, going up. And that is why we now have to think about circular economy, a sustainable future, and the things that you're discussing this week and before and after. But also there's more and more connectivity. So in 2001, Wikipedia was launched. So imagine a free Wikipedia with all the world's knowledge being edited and assembled by people themselves. That's a fascinating moment in time. Google Earth was launched, which I think is also very important for the public to have a sense of the globe. So basically what was, first we saw the image, a photograph of the world, and now we see, you can have it in your phones, in your computers. Here was the ozone layer again. This one actually, positive message has recovered. So there's hope for tweaking those Earth systems. This very briefly is a spread from a book I designed, and this spread was about nature. And the New York Earth Room was a space in New York, and it was basically it was in one of the skyscrapers. You go up the stairs, you go around the corner, and then the only thing you saw was like a layer of soil on the ground. And I was there with a teacher of mine at the time, who went to New York every time or every 2 years with students, and he said, like, I really saw people starting to cry here. So imagine you live in the city all your life, or whatever association you have with it, but people actually, just by smelling soil and seeing soil in a city full of concrete, people are being affected emotionally. So I think that's also very powerful about what art can do, what installations can do. Basically, visual communication can do. This is a project I made, and now we come in a part of the slideshow that I put in some work that I made. This is like a collage of different film production companies, which I put together, Oriole, DreamWorks, Paramount, and then I draw around it. It was part of a bigger wall installation. But I really like the idea of collaging, of mixing material, which we also do in the workshop. This was a project I did, and it was about packaging and communication and commercial communication. I used, to keep it very briefly, I used a very old technique of printing and making images for to recreate this image coming from packaging design. This was a painting by Hieronymus Bosch with the 7 sins. and Studio Makkelijk en Bij, they based an exhibition based on this painting. So there were like seven rooms in this painting, and in the museum they created 7 rooms to rebuild those rooms in the painting. And I did the graphic design for the exhibition. And talking about photography again, also comparing before after. This was like the Drift Glacier in Switzerland between 2006 and 2015. So it retreated like more than 1 kilometer. So you also need photography to basically show the effects of Earth processes. And again, also here, this was a book by Sonic X, which I designed, and I put into the book, related to the content, I put in multiple maps. This is a map from the North Pole, and it shows a lot of communities living around the North Pole. So just because, just to get you, to take the unusual perspective is very important. This was a poster I made, also collage technique, just making sense about like the plastic bottles, the microbes. This is animals, desert, clouds, holiday kind of pictures, military version of car, smartphones, burning oil fields. So I was just interested into the connections between the different things. I like to work with existing material and then mixing it and then making new thoughts, visual thoughts. This was a map I made about Washington, a city in the West, a political city, a military city. So I basically, using Google Images, I basically made a city map. So this is north, south, west, east. So this is actually, these are the buildings standing there. And, it was like political buildings, military buildings, monuments, and so on. But just it's only 2 pages in a book about, initiated by a printing collective. But just like, how do you collect the material that you have? How do you make new images, new pages, new books, and so on? This is an image that I found created by a collective called Science Geek. It's the Earth, basically the movements of the water, because we are so used to. So this is a nice combination of photography and information. You know, like we cannot see the currents, but we know them because we studied them with different techniques. And by putting this layer on top of the photograph, you get a sense of the dynamics of the Earth system. A friend of mine, he made a book about 21 Chinese shadow comets. A very nice book, very great content. Like there's all kinds of stories happening. And one of the stories is about this plastic man. It's actually a self-portrait of him. This is Sergin, and he made himself as a plastic man. Also thinking about plastic and bottles and water consumption. This was a very famous picture. Maybe you know it, maybe you have seen it. It was a big hype and meme, but it's an actual picture by Justin Hoffman. And I think it's a very symbolic picture about the state of the oceans that we're in. This is a graduation projects book from the Amsterdam Academy of Architecture. The theme of that year by the curator was Waste No More. So I was looking for sort of color pattern. So even like when there's not too much space to really translate the concept, because the book still has to basically communicate the projects inside. But I was thinking about color and like, okay, green, blue, azure, is it a bit fluor, is it toxic, or is it, you know, like what is how does a color feel? So even in terms of choosing colors, you can express thoughts, ideas. And then 2018, Extinction Rebellion is founded. Maybe you know them. I think the logo design is very good because it's about this hourglass, you know, like with the sand inside. So it's about time. Basically, the message is in one simple logo: time is up. We need to act. This is a very interesting book by Timothy Morton. It's called Being Ecological. And in the book, he says that we really have to experience the data that we are collecting. So how can we find ways to really feel the Earth heating up, and not on a practical level, but really embody the state that the Earth is in. And what I like about it, it's also very much about science and information and data. So I actually also like this very well, this cover design. And then this was also an important book about donut economics. It's from Kate Raworth, and not going into detail, but the idea of the donut was that in the book she sees this as an infographic about the Earth process. So there are different categories, and you can only have a limited use of that process. So if it goes too far, that's not a good thing. So it needs to be in planetary boundaries. And this infographic, I mean, this is only literally the key idea on the cover, but the details of it we will discuss in the workshops. This was a picture I shot in a geological museum in Moscow. We were there on a study trip. So also thinking about the Earth and the minerals and resources and mining. Everywhere around the world we are mining for minerals from the Earth for our tools, our computers, or screens, furniture, everything we are basically taking from the Earth. So we need to find a way to balance that. How do we recycle and upcycle and so on? So this one we will also discuss in the workshops, but basically this was a group called Disnovation Designer Collective, and they made patches which you can stick in your clothing about the simple idea of the grass. If you remember, I was talking about the great acceleration, like all these processes speeding up. Now basically we have to bend the curve. You know, we have to stabilize, or at least stabilize, but preferably all these processes we need to limit them, because the Earth is limited. So also our behavior should be limited, literally. Our needs, our wants, everything we want, we have to basically review and adapt to what the Earth is capable of giving. In a very, very powerful series of books, it's like one box from Penguin Green Ideas Collection. A lot of great writers, also Timothy Morton, Naomi Klein is there. A lot of interesting of today's and earlier days writers are in this cassette. You know, it's just like little short books, and I recommend to check it out because it gives a very good overview of thinking and writing about nature. So we are now approaching 2024. We are now in May 2022. So in May 2022, I was in Leipzig in Germany, and I went to the printing museum, and I was walking around the city, and then I read this graffiti that says, "Read Kropotkin." And I was like, okay, I had heard of that guy, but I don't really know it. So I basically listened to this graffiti and bought some books by Kropotkin, which I found really nice, because we are thinking about visual communication, but sometimes just, you know, like a message in text on whatever surface can be a call to action. We, of course, as designers, we try to make more, how do you say, spectacular and appealing and functional or sharp messages, but sometimes this does the trick. And I read the book, and it's from an anarchist who also from history, and he's also already in 1800s something stating and observing that we are basically ruining the earth by extracting so much material. So I like the idea of the graffiti, or the, you know, like how do you communicate to the people around you? And this was an Instagram post that I saw, a Slow Factory. It says, everything you make returns to the earth as either food or poison. So in a way, things that we make do, they have a good effect or a bad effect. So there's always the choice of choosing between the good or the bad, and of course it's not so black and white, there's a gray zone, but most important is actually information. How do we know what is going on? This one is from a satellite image. I came across it and I just liked the area, so no details about it. And we're almost there. This is a timeline from the 30s, 40s, 60s, and so on to 2000. So the dark green one was a timeline, an infographic about design and circular design. And then last December, they made a new version with 2010, 20, 30, 40. So what do we have to do in the future from today on, which relates to your week of circular future. Well, this is dramatic. It's an infographic found in the New York Times about the temperature of the water. Of course, warmer water is less ice and all kinds of disturbances of natural processes. And this is almost there. I actually wanted to end with this infographic. It's from Professor Ed Hawkins. And basically every line is a year, and it says the global average temperature from 1850 to 2023. So this is 1850, and there is 2023. So apart, I mean, we don't go into that, but there's also a lot of fake news about climate science and stuff. That's a whole big topic that we cannot deal with. But if you consider all the science, and if this is a correct image, if the data is well translated, then you see very well how the design of it can really communicate that indeed, like the logo of Extinction Rebellion says, basically time is up and we need to make a more circular economy in a circular world, and also circular design. In the end, everything we make is design. It's not like this is a design chair and this isn't. All things are designs. So they have material, they come from somewhere, go somewhere. So you as designers, you can really affect the future of the circular economy. And then I decided, okay, one more slide, because this one was from a few days ago. And yeah, the screen is slightly less sharp than the screen, but basically I found it fitting because this is a post on Instagram from Greenpeace, the Netherlands, and basically it says this is like a very big mining machine on the ocean bottom. So there they are going to mine the ocean floor for new material. And this campaign that was running now, at least in my profile, it says like, go, let's protest against these plans because they are not happening yet. But actually I think they are, but not on a very big scale, more experimental scale. But basically I wanted to end with this slide because it's an open call, like before they start this protest. And also I find it symbolic because we also talked about the cables in the oceans floor, and so it's a nice way to round up. And I think, yeah, I wish you all very good luck with all the work and the projects that you do this week and Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for listening. And also, it is a very good chance for us to ask any kind of question, especially that I've shown us a lot of a wide range of examples and illustrations about how we can use the information design and also how we can have some kind of really cool actions that it is important. So anyone just feel free to ask any kind of questions that if you have.
So in the workshops, so then.
Not the stuff.
Okay, you can always contact me after if you let it sink in. It's a big topic, so I'm here this week, so
Yes,
you can reach out.
That's true. Maybe I really want to ask more questions.
Oh, yeah, of
Because
course.
when we talked about circular design, sometimes when we talked about sustainability, the many people would think that maybe it is really difficult to make a very good or nice design or artworks because sometimes we make use of the old material, old things, old stuff. So it is quite challenging. So if any advice or any tips that you can give to our students in case that they need to use some used material for the artwork or the design work?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and I think it's also a matter of training ourselves. Like how do we perceive what is good design or fancy or beautiful or popular? Or, I don't know. Like I think we have to basically rewire our brains and to really embrace that used materials can be fantastic and they can be super cool, and we have to train also our skills in how to make them very nice. So, and also to feel that used material is better. Right? Like the circular economy should be 100% if possible. So we need to really adapt to feeling comfortable with using reusing material. And I think I think it's kind of cool. So yeah, I think we should rewire our brains. Yeah.
So much. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so maybe everyone, we are here to really appreciate others' times and sharing. So let's give a very big applause to him for his very nice sharing and really inspiring talk to us. Okay. Thank you.